Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt, over 255 ancient structures rising from the desert compared to Egypt's 138. Yet most people have never heard of them or the Black Pharaohs who built them. Now discover that while Egypt's pyramids were already ancient history, an African kingdom called Kush was still building pyramids for warrior queens and divine kings. Their steep-sided monuments crowning the Nile Valley for over 1,000 years. These pyramids stretch across the horizon in clusters of 50 or more, built by rulers so powerful they conquered Egypt itself and ruled as the 25th dynasty. They're Black Pharaohs restoring Egyptian temples and spreading Kushite culture throughout the ancient world. This is Nubia, the land the ancient world called Kush, where the Kingdom of Kush flourished from 1070 BCE to 350 CE along the banks of the Nile in what's now Sudan, building a civilization that rivaled Egypt in wealth, power, and architectural achievement. From the royal city of Meroë, with its 200 pyramids, to Napata, where warrior queens were entombed in golden splendor, these monuments represent over 3,000 years of African civilization that built, ruled, conquered, and created while the rest of the world watched in awe. Who were these Black Pharaohs whose kingdom outlasted Rome, whose queens led armies into battle, and whose iron-smelting technology was the most advanced in the ancient world? How did Sudan end up with nearly twice as many pyramids as Egypt? And why don't we learn about them in school? And what treasures and histories were lost forever when colonial looters decided African achievements weren't worth preserving? I'm the ancientologist, and I spend my time uncovering the parts of history they don't teach in school. Today, we're diving into Sudan's pyramid fields, where Africa's forgotten kingdom built monuments that prove Black civilizations were conquering empires and advancing technology. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because this journey up the Nile is about to reveal the African empire that Egypt feared, respected, and eventually bowed to. 1. The Black Pharaohs who conquered Egypt. In 747 BCE, King Meroë of Kush looked north from his capital at Napata toward Egypt, which had fragmented into warring kingdoms, its once mighty civilization collapsing into chaos as regional rulers fought for control of the Nile Delta and ancient religious centers. Meroë, whose kingdom controlled the Nile from the Fourth Cataract deep into Nubia, commanded armies equipped with superior iron weapons, trained cavalry, and disciplined infantry that made Kushite military power the most formidable in northeast Africa. The Kushite king viewed himself as Egypt's rightful ruler and the true defender of Egyptian religious traditions that northern rulers had abandoned. Their corruption of ancient practices offending Meroë's deeply held devotion to Amun-Ra, an Egyptian theological orthodoxy. Meroë's invasion of Egypt wasn't mere conquest, but religious crusade. He positioned himself as restoring proper worship, rebuilding temples, and returning Egypt to the spiritual purity it had lost under negligent rulers more interested in power than piety. The campaign was methodical and devastating. Kushite forces swept through Upper Egypt, besieged Memphis, Egypt's ancient capital, and forced surrender after surrender as Egyptian rulers realized they faced an army unlike any they'd encountered. Contemporary Egyptian records describe Meroë's shock and anger upon discovering how Egyptian rulers lived. He refused to meet one king because the man ate fish, which Meroë considered ritually unclean according to proper Egyptian religious observance. After securing control, Meroë returned to Nubia rather than staying to govern Egypt directly, content that he'd restored order and proper religious practice, though his successors would soon return to establish permanent rule. Meroë's son, Shabaka, completed the conquest around 716 BCE, establishing the 25th dynasty and becoming pharaoh of a united Egypt ruled from Kush, with Black African kings now controlling the ancient world's most prestigious throne. The 25th dynasty pharaohs, Shabaka, Shabitku, Taharka, and Tutankhamun ruled Egypt for nearly a century. Their reigns marked by massive construction projects, temple restorations, artistic renaissance, and military campaigns that extended Egyptian power into the Levant. These Black Pharaohs built more monuments in Egypt than any dynasty since the New Kingdom. Their constructions at Karnak, Thebes, and Memphis rivaling the works of Ramesses II, while they simultaneously developed their Nubian homeland with temples, palaces, and pyramids. Pharaoh Taharka's reign, 690 to 664 BCE, marked the dynasty's zenith. He built monuments throughout Egypt and Nubia, extended borders into Syria and Palestine, and became so famous that he appears in the Hebrew Bible as a defender of Jerusalem against Assyrian invasion. The 25th dynasty's cultural impact extended beyond buildings. They revived Old Kingdom artistic styles, restored ancient religious texts, promoted scholarship and literacy, and created a cultural renaissance that influenced Egyptian civilization for centuries after Kushite rule ended. Taharka, standing in Karnak's Great Hall, his dark skin gleaming with gold jewelry. Egyptian priests prostrating before this African king who commanded the ancient world's richest kingdom and most powerful army, represented a moment when Black African rulers sat on history's most prestigious throne. What drove these African kings to revive Egyptian glory, rather than simply conquering and exploiting their northern neighbor? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think motivated these Black Pharaohs. And stick around, because we're about to explore the pyramid fields where these warrior queens and divine kings were laid to rest. 2. The kingdom that wouldn't die. When Assyrian armies armed with iron weapons and siege engines drove the Kushite pharaohs from Egypt around 664 BCE, most civilizations would have collapsed, but Kush simply moved its capital south to Meroë and continued thriving for another 1,000 years. The shift from Napata to Meroë around 591 BCE represented strategic brilliance. Meroë sat at the intersection of trade routes connecting sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean and Red Sea, controlling commerce in gold, ivory, ebony, exotic animals, and enslaved people that made the kingdom fabulously wealthy. Meroë's location provided abundant iron ore deposits that Kushite metallurgists transformed into weapons, tools, and trade goods using smelting technology that was the most advanced in the ancient world. Their iron production rivaling anything in Egypt, Greece, or Rome. The city became Africa's Birmingham, a manufacturing center where dozens of furnaces operated continuously, producing iron for domestic use and export, while slag heaps from ancient smelting operations still dominate the landscape today. Meroitic civilization developed its own distinct identity, separate from Egyptian influence. They created their own writing system, Meroitic script, still not fully deciphered, developed unique artistic styles that blended African and Mediterranean elements, and established religious practices that honored both Egyptian gods and indigenous Nubian deities. The queens of Meroë wielded unprecedented power. The title Kandake, meaning Queen Mother, represented not just ceremonial position, but actual political authority, with several Kandakes ruling as sole monarchs and leading armies into battle personally. Queen Amanirenas became legendary when she fought Roman Emperor Augustus around 24 BCE, leading Kushite armies that raided Roman-controlled Egypt, captured Roman soldiers, and forced Rome to negotiate a favorable peace treaty rather than attempting full conquest of Meroë. Roman historian Strabo described Amanirenas as fierce one-eyed warrior queen who personally led cavalry charges, her military brilliance and political acumen making her one of the few rulers who fought Rome to a standstill and secured treaty recognition of Kushite sovereignty. Meroë's prosperity continued for centuries. Greek and Roman merchants traded there regularly. Indian Ocean goods reached the city via Red Sea ports, and Meroitic manufactured products, including textiles, pottery, and metalwork, found markets throughout Northeast Africa and the Mediterranean. The kingdom developed sophisticated agriculture using Nile flood irrigation, animal husbandry that produced famous Nubian horses prized throughout the ancient world, and engineering that included massive water reservoirs, hafirs, that supplied cities during dry seasons. Picture Meroë at its height around 100 BCE, a cosmopolitan city where African merchants bargain in multiple languages. Iron furnaces glow orange against the night sky, and the pyramids of ancient kings shimmer in the distance while new ones rise to honor the living dynasty. How did Kush not only survive losing Egypt, but actually flourish for another millennium? And what does this reveal about African civilization's resilience and adaptability? 3. The Pyramid Builders of Three Kingdoms. The Kushites built pyramids across three successive capital cities, Kerma, Napata, and Meroë, creating distinct architectural traditions that spanned over 1,500 years and reflected evolving cultural, political, and religious developments throughout the kingdom's long history. The earliest pyramids appeared at El Kuru near Napata around 800 BCE, built for King Kashta and his successors who would soon conquer Egypt. Their monuments combining Egyptian pyramid traditions with uniquely Nubian architectural elements that distinguished them from their northern neighbors. Nubian pyramids differ dramatically from Egyptian ones. They're steeper, 70-degree angles, versus Egypt's 50 to 55 degrees, narrower at the base, averaging 26 feet wide, versus Egypt's massive footprints, and taller relative to their base, creating dramatic needle-like silhouettes, while Egyptian pyramids appear more massive and geometrically stable. The construction method was distinctly Nubian. Instead of smooth limestone facing blocks creating uniform surfaces, Kushite builders used horizontal stone courses with stepped exteriors, giving pyramids a layered appearance unlike Egypt's smooth-sided monuments. Heights ranged from modest 20-foot structures, marking minor royalty, to impressive 100-foot monuments for major kings and queens, with size directly correlating to the ruler's importance, wealth, and length of reign. Each pyramid featured a small offering chapel at its base, a unique Nubian addition, where priests conducted ceremonies, subjects left gifts for deceased rulers, and families maintained connections with royal ancestors through ongoing ritual activities. Unlike Egyptian pyramids, where burial chambers sit inside the structure, Nubian tombs lay beneath the pyramids, accessed by steep staircases descending into underground burial chambers cut into bedrock, making the pyramid itself more monument than tomb. The burial chambers were elaborate, walls covered with painted reliefs showing the deceased's journey to the afterlife, ceilings decorated with stars representing the heavens, and side chambers storing grave goods, including furniture, weapons, jewelry, pottery, and food offerings for the afterlife journey. Meroë alone contains over 200 pyramids built between 300 BCE and 300 CE, making it the most concentrated pyramid field in the world, more than all of Egypt combined, with royal pyramids clustered in dramatic groups that create forest-like landscapes of pointed stone monuments. The northern cemetery at Meroë holds 41 pyramids, including those of Candace Amanirenas and other warrior queens whose military achievements rivaled any male rulers, while the southern cemetery contains smaller but equally beautiful pyramids for nobles, priests, and royal family members. Additional pyramid fields exist at Nuri, 20 pyramids, including that of Pharaoh Taharka, Jebel Barkal, sacred mountain with temples and royal tombs, and El Kuru, 14 pyramids, including the earliest Kushite royal burials, each site representing different periods of Kushite history and development. Standing at Meroë as the sun rises, pyramid shadows stretch across golden sand, their steep sides catching first light while below ground, Sealed chambers hold the mummified remains of Africa's greatest rulers, their jewelry still gleaming after 2 millennia in darkness. What drove the Kushites to continue building pyramids for 1,500 years, long after Egypt had abandoned the practice? And what did these monuments mean to people who saw them daily? 4. The queens who ruled and fought. Kushite civilization granted women power unprecedented in the ancient world, with Kandakes, queen mothers, wielding political authority that included serving as sole rulers, commanding armies, conducting diplomacy, and building monuments that rivaled those of male kings. The title Kandake originally meant Queen Mother, but evolved to represent actual ruling authority, with several Kandakes governing as independent monarchs rather than mere consorts or regents, their power legitimized through royal lineage and religious sanction. Queen Amanirenas, ruling circa 40 to 10 BCE, became legendary for her military prowess when she led Kushite armies against Roman Emperor Augustus after Rome annexed Egypt. Her forces raiding Roman-controlled territory, capturing several Roman fortresses, and bringing back statues of Augustus as war trophies. Roman historian Strabo described Amanirenas as one-eyed and fierce, though whether this was literal description or metaphorical emphasis on her warrior nature remains debated. But clearly, she impressed Romans with her tactical skill and personal courage. The conflict ended with Rome's governor of Egypt, Petronius, negotiating a peace treaty favorable to Kush. Amanirenas secured recognition of Kushite independence, favorable borders, and tax exemptions, making her one of the few rulers who fought Rome to a strategic victory. Kandake Amenishaketo, circa 10 BCE to 1 CE, left even more impressive evidence of her reign. A large pyramid at Meroë, numerous temples bearing her name and images, and the famous Amenishaketo treasure, a collection of gold jewelry, amulets, and royal regalia that's among the finest goldwork from the ancient world. Amenishaketo's pyramid tomb contained such wealth that when Italian treasure hunter Giuseppe Ferlini looted it in 1834, European museums initially refused to buy the treasures because they couldn't believe Africans capable of such sophisticated metallurgy and artistic achievement. The jewelry included intricate gold bracelets weighing several pounds each, elaborate necklaces combining gold with colored glass and semi-precious stones, shield rings featuring relief images of gods and symbols, and royal seals that were used to authenticate official documents and decrees. Relief carvings from her temple show Amenishaketo as a large, powerful woman wearing elaborate jewelry and royal regalia, leading prisoners in triumph, offering to gods, and displaying the full symbols of pharaonic authority that male rulers also used. Kandake Nawidamak, circa 12 BCE to 12 CE, appears in multiple temple reliefs as military leader, shown larger than accompanying male figures, wearing full royal regalia, including the double crown symbolizing rule over both Upper and Lower Kush. These warrior queens weren't anomalies, but represented a cultural tradition. Kushite society traced royal lineage through maternal lines, matrilineal succession, making queen mothers' political and religious roles central to legitimate rule, unlike Egypt's predominantly patrilineal system. Archaeological evidence shows that Kandakes commissioned major construction projects, conducted international diplomacy, controlled royal treasuries, appointed officials, and conducted religious ceremonies, exercising every aspect of sovereign authority without male co-rulers. The Greek geographer Strabo noted with apparent surprise that women ruled in Meroë. His cultural assumptions about gender-making Kushite practices seem exotic, though to the Kushites themselves, powerful queens were simply normal governance. Amanirenas mounted on a war horse, her cavalry charging Roman fortifications, while her commanders direct infantry and archers. This one-eyed African queen, personally leading forces, that would make Rome negotiate rather than conquer, represented the pinnacle of female military and political power in the ancient world. What cultural beliefs and social structures allowed Kushite women to wield political and military power that would be unthinkable in contemporary Greece, Rome, or Egypt? Let me know in the comments what you think about these incredible warrior queens. What aspect of Kush's story inspires you most? The Black Pharaohs who conquered Egypt, the warrior queens who fought Rome to a standstill, the iron smelters whose technology gave Africa military advantages, or the pyramid builders who created more monuments than their famous northern neighbors? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep demanding that African achievements receive the recognition they've always deserved. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. There are more forgotten African kingdoms waiting to reclaim their place in world history. And every one of them proves that Africa was building, conquering, and innovating while the world watched in awe.